Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to be here with you today and to share a little bit of my part of my research. I really enjoy being in this group. It's a very warm and friendly group, and I think that we have a great debate. So I'm very happy to share with you a little bit of my research. And also, I would like to say that I'm doing a lot of effort to talk to you in English. And I know it's hard for all of us, but it's important, you know. But if anyone wants to talk in Portuguese or Spanish, please feel free to, and do not miss a chance to.
You're breaking the rules,
Oh my
Renata.
God! But I really want to. I really want to make the
Sure, sure.
dialogue.
No,
Okay.
you're entitled.
Yeah.
You're the last Latin
So
American. So if people ask you
yes,
things in
yes.
Portuguese or
So,
Spanish, they're not going to disturb the rest of the remaining of the seminars because whoever comes after, that's not going
okay.
to be possible at all.
Okay, okay, but please do not miss the opportunity to share your thoughts with me. Okay, I will really appreciate it. Okay. Well, first of all, I always like to initiate my talks showing those people that are together with me and that have contributed somehow to the results that I'm sharing with you. So these guys here are also professors, students. Eventually, we find people in organizations like Flavio, Humberto, and Sergio Medeiros that agree and are aligned with us with our research views. And so I used to thank all of them for playing this research with me, and we have found all the results that I will share with you today. Okay. So just a little bit, Alexandre told a little bit about my trajectory and how I'm trying to put some effort in joining the computer science and into information systems research. And yes, I am an information systems researcher from a computer science perspective or point of view. And what it means is that although I like the idea of studying information systems and how they impact society and how organizations and people use information systems, I'm quite aware of the complexity that exists inside all this technology. So bringing these two views together is, as Alexandre said, one of my aims as a researcher. Okay, so we are those from the computer science point of view that open the black box of the complexity that may exist inside technology. And this slide here is a kind of a lot of bubbles, colored bubbles everywhere, but it's just a kind of trying to put on a paper some of my ideas or view of how information systems is organized. The research area is organized in my head or in my mind, because we have computing. Computing is a research area domain that has a lot of that is grounded on maths, linguistics, engineering. Okay, and inside computing we have a multitude of sub areas or subdomains. Some of them are very close to machines, and others are closer to organizations and humans. And of course, that these areas here are those that usually make some dialogue with the information systems field. And we are exactly in this frontier from computing and social science, humanities, and I could say many other areas, health and all other areas and somehow, And usually we we have the perspective that people from social science and human science, they study information systems from the point of view of how we can observe, evaluate the impact of this technology in organizations and society. And we from the computer science field, we are those who design, who develop, and who apply technology and this hard stuff into solutions that will somehow impact organizations and individuals. So I'm very much inside this view of trying to design things, develop new or innovative technologies, apply them, and I'm doing a lot of effort on trying to understand how these things that I design impact organizations and society. So I'm really doing a lot of effort to be here in this frontier. Okay, but as you will see. Uh, our research in our research group is still very, very concerned about how we design things. Okay. And although I'm from the computer science field, when I look back to my trajectory as a researcher, I can see that I'm not that computer science, so as a hard computer scientist, okay? I can see that I've been always closer to organizations and humans. Okay? All the areas that I studied since the 80s, when I started as a researcher, they have to do or about how we use technology to collaborate, to organize knowledge, to organize processes, to bring access to information, or what else we would like to turn open. So all my trajectory as a researcher has to do with helping people to understand themselves as organizations, to share information. And so I can say that I've always been an information systems researcher somehow, but I've assumed this role only by the end of, by the middle of the 2000, when I started to say, yes, I'm an information systems researcher. Now I understand what does it mean, and I want to be an information systems researcher. Okay, and I also, as Alexandre said, I also have an important role as an active member of the information systems community within the Brazilian Computer Society. The Brazilian Computer Society is a very large, very big academic, scientific, academic and association in Brazil in the computer science field. And we have a special committee, information systems, where I'm an active member for the last maybe 12 years. And within the Brazilian Computer Society, we have our most important conference, that is the Brazilian Conference in Information Systems, what that happens to, that will be held next year in 2022 at the Universidade Tecnológica Federal do Paraná, and Alexandre will be our host. Alexandre and his colleagues will be organizing and hosting our conference there. So I'm very involved with this community, and this has helped me a lot to not only to understand our role as researchers in information systems coming from the computer science field, as well as to try to build this this path, this research path for the whole community. Okay, and deadline submissions are open to our conference. So please, if you have any interest in submitting your papers to our conference, be our guest. Isn't it, Alexandre?
Yes, that's the possibility of, you know, all our students from Panama, from Paraguay, from Peru, Chile, Argentina, all over the place, people who are here with us.
Okay.
You know the topics that we discuss, right? Get to the, considering that Renata is doing my job now. They know that I'm a bad advertiser, right? So, but thank you very much, Renata. Yeah, take care. Take note of that SBSI 2022 website there, and have a look there. Submissions are due only by the end of January, so there's still plenty of time for work to be developed. And thank you very much for advertising it, Renata.
Sure, I had to. Okay, another important thing that I would like to share with you, so that you can understand better the research that I'm trying to present you here today, is our understanding of this term, this concept, cyber democracy. What does it mean? You know. So first of all, we have to understand that cyber democracy is the combination of two different words. The first one is democracy itself, and sometimes when we think about democracy, we think about this representative democracy. That's the idea that I have some kind of a possibility of participation into the government and state matters by choosing those that will represent me, and they will make the decisions that are important somehow. But if we study a little bit more what democracy, sorry, it's in Portuguese here, what democracy really is, we don't have a sharp definition of what democracy is, because it's a concept that's culturally and socially constructed. So democracy in Brazil can be quite different from democracy in Europe, from democracy in the United States or different countries. But it's based on the creation and preservation of rights. And one thing that I like the most on studying democracy is that conflict is legitimate and necessary. So to live in a democracy, it's important to understand that we have to discuss and conflict, otherwise we are not in a democracy anymore. And that sovereignty belongs to the people and not to the ruler. That's something that's very common sense also in our minds when we thought about democracy. Okay? But one thing that I like the most is this conflict, something that we usually try to avoid because it bothers us, but democracy is based on conflict. Okay? And the other word that we should aggregate with democracy to understand what cyber democracy is cybernetics. And when we think about cybernetics, we usually think about things like that, Terminator, this kind of robots that are able to do anything alone. But the reality is that cybernetics is some kind of old theory. It comes from the 40s, the end of the 40s. And it has to do with a multidisciplinary research area that try to study the structural regulation, both of physical or social systems. So the whole idea of cybernetics is to understand complex systems and how they adapt themselves to change in the environment. And it's a theory that has a lot of focus on system communication control and things that are very natural to living organisms, but that are very limited when we talk about machines and organizations. So people used to say that cybernetics has to do with the science of governance and control, both physically or socially. Okay, and so for us in our research group, cyber democracy is kind of how can we study the governance that can exist into democratic environments. And we also are very influenced by the ideas of social scientists like Pierre Levy, for example, that understand this cyber democracy as the result of the possibilities that we have today of transmitting and reconfiguring information, that the possibility that we have to collaborate, plurality, openness, empowerment, and governance too. And Alexandre will say, well, cyber democracy has a lot to do with collective intelligence. Yes. So what's the collective intelligence that arises from the possibilities of public opinion supported by technology, and what new organized systems and social governance can emerge from these possibilities. Okay, and so when we look at this new relationship that we can establish between communication, that's our social power of communicating, of expressing our ideas, with the technicity, that means the power of acting using technology mostly. This brings out a new political dimension, novel perceptions about time and space, a new dimension of social living. So cyber democracy has a lot to do with this cyberspace and cyber culture that we live nowadays. And for us, we understand that cyber democracy has a lot to do, is a word that brings together the major aspects of our society, a society that is connected, that has a lot of information, and that is collaborative in potential. Okay, and also it has to do with the challenge that public institutions keep have to keep in relation with the society. So for in our research, we understand cyber democracy as this concept which brings together the challenge of this new kind of ecosystems involving citizens, public organizations, technology, information, practice, policies, processes. So this is a very complex system that we would like to understand. Okay? And within cyber democracy, one aspect that happens to be in our research focus is what we call as open government. That has many dimensions now. The idea that governments can be open has to do with, for instance, with digital government or the digitalization of public services. It also has to do with the possibility of public deliberation into government matters. So that's what we call digital democracy. It has to also to do with what we call digital participation participation. That's the possibility of citizens being a source of information and helping governments to improve different services or policies, public policies. We can also understand open government from the perspective of digital governance that has to do with accountability, of how citizens can control and uh, uh, use information that is available from government activities, especially open data, to understand and to make to audit the government. We can talk about cyber activism, and we also can talk about co-design when citizens can help governments to design public services and innovate into public services. So in our research group, we have interest in all these aspects of how governments become more open and the challenges, technological challenges and social challenges and political challenges that emerge from it. And we have a lot of research programs inside our research group. And the one that I chose to share with you today has to do with digital games and how can we use digital games uh, to strengthen the ties between citizens and public institutions. Okay, but we have a lot of other research programs inside our group. Okay, and specifically talking about this research program, what's the problem that we want to address? I don't know if you have watched these two movies, and I love both of them, and I like to use them as examples of the problem that we are trying to address, mostly because they show situations from two different countries. One is a Latin American country, that's Argentina, with our handsome Roberto Darin as a character that is a citizen that receives a traffic fine, and he decides to complain about this because he believes he does not deserve it. Okay, and what happens in the movie is that he goes to a public office to complain about that, and in this scene exactly, he tries to talk to this public servant here, and it's amazing to see that we have two humans talking to each other, but there is no dialogue at all. You know, so you have this guy here acting as the public institution into a completely dumb dialogue with the citizen. So there is no dialogue at all. Oh, I can do it. Oh, it's not possible. Oh, the system is not working. You know, those kind of things that we usually um, hear when we are trying to get some public service. Okay, and the other movie um, tells about the story of this guy, and that's a guy that needs to ask for unemployment insurance. It's on United Kingdom that is considered one of the top digitalized governments in the world. So we have a different context here. We have a Latin American context and a European and United Kingdom context. And what happens here is that this guy is he's not able to have his insurance because he has a lot of difficulties. First, to use technology, and second, there is no possibility of talking to the public institution with that he needs to talk to have his insurance. And we could see in the movie that the public servants even say, "No, I don't want to talk to you. I cannot talk to you. You must go to the computer and do whatever you want. You know, you must make your you should ask your insurance using the computer. I cannot talk to you." No? So this is the problem that we are trying to address in this research. How do we improve this dialogue? How can we help citizens and public institutions to improve the dialogue that is very important between uh, these two wholes? You know, and that's the phase that some of us have already experienced when we are trying to have public service provided, especially here in Brazil. I don't know in other countries, in your countries, but sometimes we are surprised, sometimes we are angry, sometimes we don't understand. Uh, so sometimes we want to cry. Or you go to the public agency and then you realize that you forgot your documents, or somebody says that it's not possible and they can't explain why it's not possible. So I'm quite sure that some of you have already experienced one of these phases that we have here. So that's what we are trying to address. Okay. And how we are trying to approach this. Okay, so one element that we bring into our ideas of solving this problem is business process management, that I believe that you know as information systems researchers. But in case you don't know, the whole idea of business process management is to try to manage uh, important processes inside organizations. And how we do it, we have the possibility of understanding how activities, the flow of activities happen inside the organization, who is responsible for doing each one of these activities. And then we can represent this process, this flow, this activities flow into a diagram that we call business process model. And we have a whole life cycle, management life cycle, where we can model process, we can then study this process and analyze this process to find out if there are any bottlenecks or if there are any problem. And then we can redesign this process, we can change activities, we can cut off activities, we can introduce new activities, we can change roles, we can uh, modify this process and implement it into the organization, and monitor and uh, follow its performance. And it's a quite important market area today. So we have today many important companies that provide business process management tools to support all these activities, all this life cycle. We have a lot of consulting organizations too. And business process management is being used by organizations, and they can also be used by public organizations to improve their own processes. Okay, so we start with the idea that public organizations can have their services, for instance, modeled and managed using BPM. Okay. Another element that we bring into our research is the idea of social BPM. That's the idea that we can use all this BPM platform to improve the collaborative possibilities that exist when we are studying processes inside an organization. So uh, to build this kind of model here can be or must be a participatory activity, a collective activity, because we must try to merge different perspectives of the same process into the organization. So it's a collective activity. Uh, and this idea of social BPM has understands that it's possible to include the external environment into this activity. So I can bring my clients. I'm an organization. I have a lot of process. Some of this process are aimed to provide some product or service to my clients, and I can have the possibility to include clients into the design of this process. Okay, so this is the main idea of social BPM. How can we engage both process actors as well as clients into this life cycle of improving our processes? So this idea of social BPM also inspired us to build our solutions. Okay. So in this way, for the last years, we had tried to design different solutions where we could uh, improve the dialogue between citizens and public organizations using BPM. So if a public organization has used BPM as an approach for managing their processes. They probably have process models, which we can, for instance, simplify so that citizens can, for instance, understand how this public organization uh, execute activities, perform activities to provide the service to me. What about that? Is it possible for citizens to understand how public organizations work internally so that they provide a service to me? Okay. So we worked on how we could simplify this diagram that's mainly a technical diagram to be understandable by citizens. We try to use structures like process animation so that citizens could understand, for instance, an important aspect in business process that are rules. So why does this service last 3 months to be provided? Oh, don't you know we have all this path here to follow before we can give you this document? That's why we take 3 months, you know. And why I can't have my service provided? Well, because there is a rule here inside that you should apply, and you are not, you know. We thought about platforms for process discussion. So if citizens can understand this process, they could be able to evaluate and comment on different aspects of this process. Maybe an actor, maybe one activity. And we also thought about a business rules discussion application for citizens. So we have been trying different ways of making citizens aware of how public organizations perform to provide them services, and also how public organizations could be more transparent in this way. Okay, and we thought about games, and the idea of using games is that games is such a kind of extraordinary area, you know, because it's very attractive. Anytime we thought about games, people feel like, oh, it's funny, it's interesting, and but also the games, digital games industry is very huge now. It drives much of the world's creative and technology economy. It's bigger than movies in North America. So it's a great phenomenon. You know, what makes us so engaged and so interested into games. You know? And two things that inspired us very much. First of them is the book from Jane McConigal. It's a bestseller in the game area, Reality is Broken, where she discussed exactly what is here in the subtitle, why games make us better and how they can change the world. And she brings with a lot of poetry, I can say, and also a very beautiful way, um, how games could be used to turn our serious world more happy, more challenging, and more interesting somehow. You know, so this book inspires us um, very much, and I think it inspires the whole game research community. You know, and another one is this movie. Actually, it's a documentary. It's a Brazilian one, so I really suggest our Brazilian colleagues, but also the Latin American ones, to watch this movie. That's called Tarja Branca. And what does it mean? I don't know if it's all the same internationally, but here in Brazil, we have a kind of a classification of medicine, drugs, that when it has a black stripe, that we call tarja preta, that's because it's a medicine that has to do, that address, for instance, depression, anxiety. So they are medicines that affect somehow your brain, you know. And this movie is called Tarja Branca, that means um, um, white stripe, because it's the opposite. So what could we use to substitute the black stripe, you know, medicine, and try to find, to eliminate depression, anxiety, and so on. And this movie talks about playing. So we must regain our ability of playing in our common activities, our work activities, in our living, we somehow lost the ability of playing as when we were children, you know. So it's a very, very, very beautiful and sensible movie, and it makes us think about it in the sense that how can we help to turn public service, for instance, that's something very boring that people usually complain so much, that people usually don't like to go to a public office to have public services provided because they usually think about, oh, I will lose my day, it will be terrible, you know. How can we change um, this feeling, you know? So those are our inspiring sources. And if we look about the concepts, of course, what are games? Games are social and cultural activities. They are immersive and they must be voluntary. Sorry, I put an N here. That's too much. They must be voluntary, challenging, and entertaining. That's what games. When we think about games, that's what comes with this word. You know. Of course, we are talking here about digital games, those that are controlled by computers, played in digital environments, and especially a kind of digital games that's called serious games. And I particularly don't like this name, serious games, because I believe that games must be fun, and so serious games is some kind of contradictory for me, you know. So I prefer to use the name games with purpose, you know. So it's a game, it's fun, but it has a secondary aim that must be training, learning, or transmitting values somehow. You know? So we are talking about this kind of games, games that are not just only for fun, but you have fun and you also have the possibility of learning or changing your behavior or learning mainly. Okay. And it's understood that games can change behaviors, it can develop abilities, it can also direct innovation. For instance, I invite you to search for this non-profitable organization that is Games for Change, and they are very concerned about stimulating the design of games that can change behaviors into important themes into society. For instance, this game here, Resilience, is a game that where you take the role of a refugee, and then you have to live as a refugee into this magical world here, and then you face all the challenges of being a refugee, and this can make you change a little bit your point of view about being a refugee. And they have a lot of other different games dealing with different themes, important themes that somehow are important today in our society. And of course, we can develop abilities. We have organizations that try to build games for training, for changing organizational behaviors. This one is very interesting. I think it's Payoff. I think it's the name of this game, where you again you assume the role, you take the role of the manager of a big corporation, and you have uh, to fire people from this corporation. Otherwise, the corporation will break. You know, so you have to choose, and then you click into this persons here, little persons here, and then you have the whole description of this person for how long he or she works in the corporation, if he needs or not to be into this corporation, if he's fired, what will happen with him, and so on. And you have to take this decision. So the whole idea is to build some understanding and empathy of how hard can be this position, you know, to fire people in a big corporation. So those are the kind of games that are interesting us in our research work. Okay, and of course we also I took some phrases, some words, especially from McGonigal and other people from the game research area, that I think that are also aligned with what we think. And the most important of them is this one here. Sometimes we believe that work is not playing and playing is not working. They are opposite words, and that's not really true. No? You know that maybe the opposite word for playing is depression. You know, there are some ideas that we as humans, nothing makes us more happy than hard work. We like risk, we like time filling, we like mental activities, we like to be creative, we like to discover things, we usually like to collaborate. So, um, can we find that in doing work? That's the question. You know. Another one is that game designers are engineers of happiness, and what is interesting in games is that we can do into a immersed into a magic world, in a fantasy world, um, what sometimes we cannot do into reality. And this experience can make us change the way that we somehow see the reality that surrounds us. So those are the ideas and the objectives that we want to pursue with designing our games. You know, how can we be more happy? You know, so of course that game development is not that so easy. It's a serious and non-trivial process, and here is where computer science starts to appear. You know, because when we think about game design, it's not only art design. When we think about all these scenarios and characters and so beautiful experience that we have colored, we have a lot of art design into games in games. But it's not only software development. We have a lot of code to build a game. So it's difficult. There is a complexity in developing games because it's not only aesthetics or beauty, and it's not only code. It's multidisciplinary in nature, you know. And we have a lot of game design and game engineering literature and um, approaches. We have frameworks. We have processes. We have a lot of suggestions about how we should design games. And into this idea, we decided in our research group to think about how can we design games that can turn public services more fun. Okay, can using public services be fun? Can we motivate people to about public service? Can we help them understand better how the services are provided? Can we engage them into these processes um, at the point that the citizens can share information and experience about this service? Can we help, for instance, that's a very important concern about public organizations. Can we decrease fraud? Can we decrease middlemen that are those people that help other people to have their service provided? So can we improve the dialogue between citizens and public institutions so that this way of providing services can be more understandable? And so we started to think about that, and our first idea, it happened to be with some colleagues from Germany that were visiting us in Brazil, and then we had this idea. When we think about service provision, at least in Brazil, what happens is that you have a service portal where you can find some information about this service, um, about what's the objective of the service, what are the documents that you must bring to have the service. You can schedule it. Sometimes you can schedule an appointment to have the service provided. And then you go to the public office and then you sit into chairs like this. And then you reach someone that will try to solve your problem. Okay, and what may happen is that this guy here says, "Oh, I cannot help you today because it's missing something, or something is not right. You must come another day," and so on. So, and you again, you have the possibility of one of that baby faces that I showed before. You know, and then you leave this place with the idea, what happened? Why not? Why I could not have my service provided? You know? And sometimes this guy over here is not really able to explain you what happened. You know, you just have um, some idea of what happened, but sometimes himself he does not know exactly all the process that is behind him. You know. So our first ideas was inspired by the Papers, Please game. That's a game where you are a kind of police department into the frontier, into the border of a kind of country, a nation, and you have to let people come in or not into this country. And you have some kind of rules here, and you can deny or allow this person to go on. And you face a lot of dilemmas because sometimes it appears here someone that you, oh, I could trust this old lady here because she's so cute. I will let her come into the country. And then it happens that this old lady is carrying a bomb and will explode one building inside the country and so on. So we were inspired by these ideas, and we started to think about, and what about if the player takes the whole of the public servant and he has to deal with all the stuff, the rules, the resources that are provided into this public institution. And they receive different citizens with different problems, with different realities, and they have to cope with this, with each one of them. So this would bring them, the players, with a different perspective of how the service is really provided by public institutions. So this was our first idea. And then we started to think about, so how we will design this game. And one thing that happened to us was to use business process models. And if we think a little bit, you see that what do a business process and, for instance, Super Mario, that's a very famous game, what do they have in common? They are what we call a kind of adventure game. So you have a target, that is the end of the process here, and you have to follow a lot of activities and have a path with different challenges into this path to reach your target. So it's not too different from what a process is, a business process is. Something start this process, and you have a kind of different activities you must execute so as to achieve your target. Okay, so we started to think about how can we translate uh, business process into adventure games, for instance. And then we created this kind of mapping and we found out that the elements that we use into to the description of BPM, of business process models, can be somehow can have some relation to the elements that we used to have in game design. So actors can be players or characters or game worlds. Events can be events into games. Gateways can be rules. Tasks can be tasks into the game, and so on. Resources into the game, into the business process can be resources into the game. So we started to build this mapping, and we built a method that we called Play Your Process, uh, that is able to translate using a supporting tool. We can translate a business process model into a kind of game design specification where a team of game designers can develop the game. So this, of course, we have a lot of activities to follow into this method. I will not detail this now. And though it came to us the idea that we were somehow defining a new genre of games that we called business process-based digital games, a new kind of games. And these games, what they are for, they are serious digital games where a business process can be played in a logic way, allowing players to experience, understand, and learn how the process works in a fun and engaging way, and to reflect on its needs, practice, values, challenges, and limitations of executing. So these business process-based digital games are some kind of immersive games where you experience the business process execution as a player. You know? And we started to explore this idea into public service. And the first one we worked on was in a partnership with the police department in Rio de Janeiro. And it was a very, very, very good experience, especially for me as a researcher, because we started to talk. It was an opportunity that appeared to us to the police department opened the possibility of building a game for them, and then we we decided to work on it. And then we started to see that we knew nothing about how the police department in Rio de Janeiro worked, for instance, to find missing persons in the state. And then I ask you, especially the Brazilian colleagues, what do you know about how the police department finds missing people in your city, in your state, or in your country? If someone disappears in my family, where should I go first? To the police, to the hospital, to the morgue? Um, or I really don't like to go to the police station. It's a terrible place. It's sad. Uh, but I don't want to even know about how the police department do this work, you know. Um, and I'm quite sure that you Brazilians know about this kind of signs that sometimes we go to the cinema and before the movie is played, we see somehow displayed in the screen some signs like these. People are missing. Please, if you find this this guy here, call us. Or this kind of faces of children in a sign. So, and sometimes we look at it and we don't pay too much attention and what's behind all that. And I don't know if you are aware of that, but in the state of Rio de Janeiro, we have about 400 people that disappears per month. You know, so we started to make contact with this reality, and that started to impact us a lot. And for instance, we met this woman here that is Jovita Belfort. Now she is an activist for improving the process of finding missing people in Rio de Janeiro because her daughter disappeared about 15 years ago and she never could find out what happened to her. And so we started to make contact with these stories and this reality. And the police officers told us about the difficulties that they have to do this work because sometimes people arrive at the police station and they don't bring enough information that can help them do their work and to investigate the people who is missing. They told us about very strange situations where people come to the police station to trying to find out persons, but not for because they disappeared, because they have that this person owes them something, some money, you know. Uh, they told us about a lot of children and people who disappears, but not really disappears because they are trying to escape from domestic violence. And then we as citizens, we have realized we know nothing about this service, of how this public institution provides this service to me. And then we started to work about it, and we modeled a process, a very short process, very with not too many activities. And this process has to do with the first steps of receiving information from someone that is claiming that some people in the family has disappeared, and what the police officer has to do. So he has to collect information, he has to analyze this case, he must be aware that if it's really a missing case or if not, a missing person case or not, or if it's someone that's trying to find information about someone and it's not really missing. And the importance of collecting quality information with quality to start the investigation, and the need to register this information into the information systems that exist inside the police department. And we used this process to build the game. We mapped it, we translated it into game design elements. And we have this prototype. It's a prototype, guys, because we are not art designers, okay? And of course, we still have a lot of game design to do into this prototype. That's called Desaparecidos in Portuguese, or missing person game. And the whole idea is that the player takes the whole of the police officer department, and then he receives, he has to attend to citizens that arrive looking for persons, and sometimes it is really a missing person case, sometimes it's not. So he must analyze the case and decide if it is or if it is not. Of course, he has some time to do it, otherwise it's not challenging enough. and he has also to face a lot of things that happens internally to the police department. For instance, the lack of resource of computer resources of information um, to perform his work. The person that arrives here at the police station starts to be impatient, and so he has to do something to calm down the person, and he must be aware that of the information that is necessary to collect from this person that's arriving at the police station, so that he guarantees that the investigation will start in a good way. So the game uh, implements all the steps and the situations that we collected with the police officers about what really happens when we are trying to find missing persons in the state. And the whole idea is that the player starts to understand it. That's the way that things happen inside the police department. Those are the challenges. Oh, that's why I need to bring this kind of information so I can have my dear person found. So that's the whole idea, to make people have more empathy about what's happening inside the public organization. Okay, and we have a lot of prototypes, and we conducted some experimental results, mainly to understand if using the game changed somehow the knowledge and the understanding of the player about the process. And it showed us that yes, when you play the game, you become more aware of, especially about the activities that must be followed to have the service provided. Okay, these are detailed in the paper. Um, Another prototype that is interesting to talk to you about was the Bolsa Família. Bolsa Família is a large income transfer program in Brazil. Unfortunately, it has been discontinued today, but it's a service that has a lot of controversial opinions about it. Should the state provide money for the poor or not? And mainly, what do you know about Bolsa Família? What are the rules? Who can benefit from this program? Do you know that when you have uh, families uh, registered in the information systems that manage the Bolsa Família, that means that your city, your municipality can have more money from the government? Do you have any idea of the relationship that exists about having families in your municipality having money from the Bolsa Família program, and the improvements that the municipality may have uh, with this economical growth? So we built a very simple prototype. This happened with a partnership with Caixa, that is the public bank that manages Bolsa Família, or manages Bolsa Família. It's a kind of a puzzle game where we work mainly with the rules, and where you must say if this family that appears here is eligible to have Bolsa Família or not. And you have to understand the rules that has to do with age, income, family income, the existence of not of documents, and so on. And so you have to somehow say, oh, this family yes, this family no. And in the end, if you are able to have many a good number of families into the program, it means that the city that's called Prosperopolis will show an improvement in many areas like education or health and um, entrepreneurship and so on. So that was the whole idea of the game. So are you aware of some details about Bolsa Família that somehow you don't know? Okay, this was another prototype that we did. And finally, one thing that was very interesting for us is that we had a lot of experiments with our students while we were working on player process method. And one interesting situation occurred with one of our students. We were working on a game the uh, for having the grade certificate into our university, the process that must be executed inside the university so that the student can get his certificate. And one of the students designed a game. First of all, let me explain what killing the boss is. Those that are gamers know quite well what killing the boss is. But killing the boss means at the end of the game, you face the big enemy. And when you win this big enemy, you win the game. You know, that's what means killing the boss. You kill the great enemy of the game. And one of our students designed a game that at the end of the game, the player killed the secretary at the university. And then we put our hands in our head and said, oh my God, this can happen. So we started to think about values. We cannot let it free, We cannot have a game designed for public service where in the end you kill the public servant. So we started to think about values, and this was another research work, a master dissertation, that what would be important values to be designed into these games. And then we built a kind of a card deck, where we have different values. These values came from a very famous researcher in games, that's Mary Flanagan. Mary Flanagan has a list of values for game design, and we merged this list with values that we found out into our constitution, at the Brazilian constitution, and also from different digital strategies for the Brazilian federal government. And then we made this study, and we selected a set of values that could be important for Brazilian public service games, so that game designers could brainstorm using these cards to decide what would be important values to be designed into the game. Okay. Of course, we also have a method to do that, but I will not detail it too much. And one idea that we have is, can we imagine the idea of having game design teams in public organizations, and why not? Thinking about the idea of happiness and fun. What about having game design teams in public organizations working specifically on games for dialoguing with citizens? And just by chance, recently we attended to this lives. It's a series of lives into the public administration national school that's called ENAP in Brazil, where it's a very important school of public administration for public servants in Brazil. And they had specifically a set of lives about designing games to government, to public policies and public services. So we believe that we are going forward this idea of having games into this context. Okay. Of course, that we need a lot of case studies, and we need your help, for instance, to understand how can we evaluate and measure the impact and see if these games are effective to what they are being, the purpose that they are being designed. We need too much to make more case studies, and we still have a lot of work to do with the game design. We still have prototypes. There is a lot of work to do to improve fun play aesthetics, and to evaluate the effectiveness of these games. We still have a lot to do of supporting tools for designing these games. And one thing that is happening is that we are using also player process, not only for building games for dialoguing with citizens, but also for organizational training. But it's another research path. Okay, so we are now in the mood of trying to build different games for different public organizations, and to make new studies and to find out if this idea can be improved somehow. Okay, so let's keep in touch if you want. And I think I've done. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Renata. This is a very exciting topic. I see people
Thank
already
you.
clapping. I know that there's probably going to be a lot of questions there
I
or
hope.
comments. So I'll ask today that people just use the hands up so that we know who wants to talk and organize that. I have one first question for you, Renata,
Okay.
because it's my duty. I mean, when we're talking about games, of course, everyone thinks about the fun part of it, and it's fun to develop. It's fun to, but there is something with respect to the research that is very important, and I know that you did for your papers and everything. That is, you had a way of answering the question that I will ask you.
Okay.
What is the difference between you developing these games and someone you as a researcher and someone, let's say, just a software developer doing it, or an engineer doing it? And basically, my hint here is tell these people a little bit about design science research.
Ah, okay. Let me see if I understood. Okay.
No, it's basically because I was well. I have even one of my students who is around here, and the
Okay.
other day he says, "I want to do some research showing the world this," and I said, "Well, researchers don't do research to show something that they already know. They the research is actually about something that they still don't know, and and at the same time, we do things that they don't do outside let's say, I mean, we use a scientific method, and using a scientific method means that we have to finish the cycle, right? um,
Okay.
in that sense, the question is always, I mean, we tend to be very pragmatic in research in information systems sometimes, but when we do get very pragmatic and solve a problem, if that's just solving a problem, it ends up being a problem of engineering. How do you make sure that you're also creating knowledge by the research? And my hint there is because I know you use that kind of methodology, design science research. And
Okay. Okay. I understand. Okay. How do we guarantee that we are producing knowledge? The first thing that we must understand is that we are designing solutions. We are designing games that most of it is software, but we have first to understand the context. That's the one important thing. So we had to go to for instance, to the police department and to understand all the reality that was there inside, so that we could really understand and formulate and somehow define what were the real problems, the real requirements, and then to find out into the domain of knowledge that we have, those solutions that could solve this problem. And I think that is the first aspect of design science research. That's the idea of research, design, artificial design, So you were trying to build knowledge by building a solution to a specific context, and then sometimes the solution is innovative. It is something new that nobody has somehow tried before. And then you evaluate it into this context, and then you have knowledge that is where you can somehow um, feed another cycle of design, and then you both have information about design, the knowledge about how you designed that artifact, as well information about the results you have using this artifact into this context. And so those are scientific results somehow. So you
because
can have.
sometimes you need someone else saying the same.
Okay,
Because
okay, okay,
in Portuguese, guys, we have this saying. I'll say it in Portuguese, and then I'll try to translate. Right? Santo de casa não faz milagre.
okay,
So
yes,
it's always important that other people confirm what
okay,
we say. And basically, one important thing when we are developing artifacts is, if we're just developing artifacts, we are engineers. We are, I mean, we're someone that is practicing information systems. But if we want to do research in information systems, before we just implement something or develop something, we think of what we want to do. We do this whole cycle, and design science research is just one of the methods to
yes,
do that. You to
mm-hmm,
think what you're doing, at the end you assess, because that's when you do your learning. And your learning,
mm-hmm,
meaning the learning that you can convey in your paper, you can share with the rest of the community later. All
okay.
right. Nobody answer. Okay, Guillermo has.
Guilherme
So you don't need your hands up. Just open your mics. But Guillermo, please. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I said if I didn't raise my hand, probably would never let me speak. So I decided to go democratic. Renata, thank you so much for your talk.
yes,
I don't know if I missed it because I was in and out, but in order to get people to participate in this kind of game design for civil servants and for citizenship participation, did you think about the typical badges that you give in games, right? When you achieve certain levels. So when you do certain number of processes through the game, get some kind of badge, which could be translated also probably in tax benefits or something that is actually, a good attractor for the citizen to use it.
Okay.
Besides the fact that it should be more fun and it should be more attractive by itself, and rather than just dealing with a guy. And by the way, those movies that I saw, the one that Renata Araújo is fantastic. The guy with the bomb is fantastic.
Yes, it is.
It's an extreme example. If you haven't seen it, please do it because of not being hurt, right, by a public servant.
Okay, thank you, Guilherme. Well, I think that one thing that is important to say that when we build a game, the game itself is attractive. So we should not need gamification to engage people into playing a game. Okay, so the game must be good enough to engage people for the challenge that it gives. Okay, but yes, we thought about this kind of gamification in relation with possible benefits that you can have with the public institution, especially when we were working at Caixa, that's the public bank. And we thought about, okay, so if they played Prosperopolis, that's the name of the game, they could somehow earn what we called Caixa coins. That's the kind of a virtual currency that they can exchange for some benefits at the public bank. But unfortunately, I left the public. I was working at the public bank like a sabbatical period, and then I left, and the manager that was sponsoring the project left too. And then we could not continue the work,
And we know the sad ending of that story, yeah.
Yes, so we could not continue. But yes, we can think about it for sure.
Because probably it's not so much to attract for the first time, but also to engage the person, right? To feel community, to be a part of it, and to continue and to earn more levels, so to speak, right?
Okay.
So that sense of achievement. I am not just any user, but I am a good citizen. I'm a very good citizen. I'm an extremely good citizen. Things like that, right?
Yes, we can think about it. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Renata, that report of yours being there in a sabbatical and leaving, and then the executive there leaving as well, it sounded so much public service. But anyway, Silvio, go ahead.
Okay, Renata, congratulations for your work. It's very interesting. And my thesis, I try to build a software using DSR. So my question is, what phase of DSR, the design science research, was more difficult, and which phase you spend more time?
Okay.
Even I use Peppers too. Okay, the author is the same that you are.
Okay. First of all, I should say I would let me try to help Alessandro a little bit. I think that you are not building a software using DSR. Okay, you are doing a research based on DSR, and one of the steps of your DSR is to build an artifact that comes to be a software. Okay. Well, what I think was the most difficult was to understand the methodology. Okay, how do we design our research using the design science research concepts? What's really the problem? What's really the requirements? What's the artifact? That's very hard for a student to define. You can imagine it. Okay, how you will evaluate it, and the whole idea of having cycles. What will be the first cycle and then the second cycle? I think that the hard thing is to understand the methodology, because it's not just building software. You must have epistemological sources, theories that you must bring into your design. So I do think that the hard part is to design your research using DSR. Okay. Sometimes you see in some research, well, I use DSR, but then you look, it's not DSR, it's something else, So you must decide if you really want to use design science research or not, and if you want to use it, do it correctly. But I must say, I'm not sure if I'm doing it perfectly. We are doing our best to do, but I'm not sure if we're doing it perfectly, okay? But it's the hard part. From my point of view, I don't know what Alexandre thinks about
And I guess doing it perfectly depends on who says so, right? I mean, there's a lot of controversial statements about, design science research and everything that comes with it.
I think that design science research is one of the approaches that we can have that already acknowledges that we are not there only to do something that is, I mean, let's say a lot of what Renata was reporting here today was, that's great extension. The university is reaching out, and the university is helping society to become better.
Yes.
So, and it's important that we at university we do extension. It's important that we do education.
But if you produce knowledge in the process,
exactly, if you're producing
then
knowledge,
you're
you have to
doing
have a way
research.
of assessing that you're producing knowledge. And in that sense, I think what Renata says, research, design science research, is not a methodology for building your application.
No.
For that, you have all those computer science, software engineering
agile
techniques.
methodologies and whatever.
Exactly.
And for instance, in our research, we produced knowledge for the game design domain, because it's not really yet really understood what's the best way of designing games. We don't have this answer, So we contributed to this field by showing a method for building these kinds of games. And we also contributed to the open government domain by showing, let's see if we can use games for doing this dialogue.
And design science research will probably help you develop the metrics for that, and then the assessment of those metrics at the end.
Yes. What I want to say is that when we use design science research, maybe we will always have a multidisciplinary research, because you have to understand the context, and then you have contributions to the context and the theories that surround the context, and you have contributions to the design or building aspect of your research. You can be paying attention to these two sides of the research.
Perfect. Angel?
Thank you, Alexandra. Congratulations for the topic and the research. More than anything, it's like my contribution. Games can change behavior, this right, and understand around and behavior or art. I think about that with the games design can help people show the use the service public in a better way. And in other time, it maybe is a bit a crazy idea, have a game design area in the public organization. Now it's a revolutionary idea. It's very nice, your topic. Increase motivation that people. Thank you, Alexandra. No, thank you, Renata.
Okay.
Thank you, Renata.
Thank you, Angel. May I comment a little bit on what you said? One thing that happens, and I think it's very interesting, is that when we arrived at Caixa, the public bank, with this crazy idea of let's build games to talk with the citizens, whenever we presented the idea to the high executives of the bank, they started looking at and then, okay, it's nice, but can I use it for training, for organizational training, So we realized that public managers were not thinking about this style, They were still concerned about how they will train their staff to do things inside the organization, So I do think that games can be a way of doing that. That's why we are doing our research, but I'm aware that we still have a lot to do talking about it inside organizations, because people still understand games as throwing time in the basket away, It's not work. If you're playing games inside the organization, you're not working. You are doing something else. So you have to be doing something that's work. So train people with games. There's pressure.
Renata, but when you say that they were thinking about using games to train people, I know they're searching for efficiency.
Completely.
But was that? Do you think that was something a plus to what you were already thinking, or that reduces what you thought?
That made us it did not reduce, because we're still convinced that we should try more with games for this dialogue. But it really showed us that there was another opportunity that was working on business process-based digital games to train organizations into their business process.
I have to admit, before I read your paper, I thought that was the main purpose. So I guess I have that kind of mentality also.
Yes. And now we are working on it. We have a partnership with a mining company, a gold mining company, and they want to train their workers not actually they want to persuade their workers to make quality registration of information about maintenance into the mines, in the how can I say subsolo? I forgot it.
The ground?
And the ground, yes. So we are trying to build a game for them for training their workers on this process. Okay.
Is it going to be to train them and show them that that's important, or is it going to be to gamify the introduction of data and making sure that they
to change their consciousness about the importance of putting information into the ERP so that this will improve their work and so on. So it's not gamification, it's really a game.
Right. Any other people? Just raise your hands or just open your mics. Don't be shy.
There is someone that's asking for the link to confirm presence.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that. I'll include it there. Yeah. See, students are students all the time, right?
Yes.
I'll include the link here. But while I include the link, go on with your questions, guys. You know that I am monotask here. I cannot include that for you and ask Renata additional questions.
I think everybody is thinking about it.
Or they're trying to play
You were
the game.
cycling clear, so that's why there are no questions in it.
What they're doing is they're trying to play Desaparecidos.
Maybe.
Now that you said that
it's
thing is
just a
working.
prototype. Don't expect Lola, League of Legends. It's just a small prototype.
I wrote the model yesterday that the reading is so soft and clear, very interesting. So questions very good. Because of this, my focus on methodology to understand it, because the text is very, very easy to read and to understand.
Thank you.
And the artifact is clear too, though. It's very good to have some questions for you.
Yeah, Renata, it's worth for you to check there on Moodle afterwards the comments that people wrote on their reading, because
I don't know if I have access to the Moodle.
Of course you do. It's in the link. Yeah, I guess there is a link there. Look, there is a link to the in the chat.
Students will always be students, and professors will always be students.
Okay.
Well, I can tell you that you're already connected. The only problem is that you have to remember your password, and
I think maybe that's the problem.
Yeah,
but
that UTF-PR system is crazy. This is one of those things that we as people that work with computers, we should at some stage understand that complex passwords are worse than simple passwords, in the sense that we will not remember. We'll either write it somewhere or we will forget it.
Yes, sure.
And the password there, I think it asks for capital letters, small letters, numbers, and special characters. So it's a completely it's very easy to forget. Anyway, if there are no further questions, I would like to thank Renata again. It's great when we finish the talks of the Latin Americans with someone doing such a bright speech to us. As I told you, from next week on, we will have a series of, as we call here in Brazil, and I think that people call it in other parts of Latin America as well, and that's no offense at all. That's at least not from our end. We call them gringos, right? So it's going to be with the gringos. We'll have next week Professor Álvaro Arenas, which really doesn't qualify as a gringo because he's
he's Colombian. He doesn't qualify.
He's Colombian and he's teaching in Spain.
Exactly.
And it's going to be on in the search of business models for data sharing. And as I already told you, what did I do here? No, that's not what I wanted. Just let me come back. Yeah, for whatever reason, it was showing a number. And then after Professor Arenas, we will have Michael Myers the next week, directly from New Zealand. And then we will have Stacy Peter and Laurie Giddens from the States. And for our final research seminars, yes, we're getting close to the end, Professor Steve Alter talking about the work system. So yeah, we have an interesting set of for the remaining of the semester there. Hope to see you next week.
Do you know the origin of the word gringo, Alexander?
Pardon?
Do you know the origin of the word?
I do. It's green go.
It was the American-Mexican War when they invaded us. They wore a green uniform.
was the Mexicans telling them, go away.
So we are the intellectual authors of the word. Yeah.
So at that time, it was it probably had an offensive, let's say, sort of offensive, an offensive meaning. But we in Brazil, we call gringos anyone who's not Brazilian. In fact, there's no offense at all. I mean, we Latin Americans treat all gringos very warmly all the time. And I have to say, you are all gringos to us anyway, because anyone who's not Brazilian is a gringo to a Brazilian, right? Okay, guys.
I'm
see you
gringo.
next
Yeah.
week.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. See you next
Thank you,
week.
Renata.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
And if
Thank
you
you.
need
Thank you, everybody.
anything, please keep in touch. Okay.
We will.
Bye bye.